Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. I found myself with some free time, and so I thought I would bring you, excuse me, uh, the Alligator Brains portion of the Insight Framework program, live and in person, courtesy of moi. Yeah, it's Monday, I'm punchy, look out. Okay, this lesson is about alligator brains. And it's about alligators, which is particularly poignant now that I live in Florida. There's a pond right behind my house that I'm pretty sure has at least one in it. So I want to talk to you about brains. Dan Siegel uses a fist model. So that's what we're going to use. This is your brain stem. There's no thinking going on here. You could be brain dead and your brain stem could still be active. Sitting on top of that, way back here, right on top of your brain stem, is your limbic brain. Some people call it your downstairs brain. I call it your alligator brain, and the reason I call it that is because that's exactly how evolved it is. There's an organ in here that has just one job, and it does a magnificent job, and its job is to keep you alive. It's called your amygdala. Now, when you put your hand on a hot stove, what happens? You jerk your hand back, right? You don't stop and think like, oh, was that 212 degrees? Right? That's your amygdala. It says, pull your hand back, get safe. Now suppose you were chewing gum and talking on the phone and you put your hand on that hot stove. You're still going to jerk it back first and foremost. In fact, you could be singing the ABCs backwards on roller skates. Put your hand on a hot stove and you will still jerk your hand back. Your amygdala has the master switch for your entire brain. When it senses a threat, it prioritizes your physical safety above everything else and gets you focused on what you need to do to either fight or escape the danger. So your fight, flight, and freeze reactions all live down here in your limbic brain. If you've seen the movie Inside Out, you might remember the character Anger. He was the one with the flames shooting out of his head, played by Louis Black. He lives right there. Now, sitting on top of that, up here, is your thinking brain. Some people call downstairs your feeling brain, and upstairs is where thinking takes place. I like to think of an air traffic control tower that has a power cord hanging out at the bottom of it. Planes going in, planes going out. It's controlled chaos with lots of moving pieces. And flooding is what happens when the alligator pulls out the power cord and the whole thing just shuts right down. Now we've really got chaos, right? You can think of your upstairs brain as fitting like a lid. When your amygdala feels threatened, the lid pops off. It's not connected. So when you're jerking your hand back, you don't have access to the stuff that's up here. What kinds of things live up there? Language, empathy, compassion, the ability to anticipate consequences or delay gratification. Those are all upstairs functions. Many times when I'm talking about upstairs brains, I'll say, please pass the butter, in my flat tone of voice. If you could say, please pass the butter in that really just basic tone, that's the sound of upstairs. Now, if I were downstairs, it would sound like, pass the freaking butter. See the difference? So let's talk about how human brains evolve. When we're first born, all of our sensory input gets filtered by our amygdala first and foremost. And that's to keep us safe. Makes sense. Human infants are helpless, so they need all the warning signals that they can possibly get. But over time, as we have new experiences, we grow new neural pathways in our brain. And the beautiful thing about brains is that we continue to grow them until we die. The old ones that aren't being used, they just wither up and die off. which makes room for the new ones to function more directly and efficiently. So let me give you an example. Imagine with me, little kid, 3 years old, complete rotten snot. You take that kid to IHOP for the first time. You could probably just picture the menu. 18 different colored pictures of pancakes in every imaginable permutation. I mean, it's completely overwhelming. The kid's not going to know what to do. Mom or dad's going to say, hang on, you have pancakes at home. You love them. They're your favorite thing to eat. See, they have pancakes here. So the kid has the pancakes and the neural pathway is created. IHOP pancakes are legit. A week later, take that kid to Denny's. Now we're in a completely different circus. The menu's yellow, the seats are red, everything's different. And mom says, hang on. You had pancakes last week at IHOP and you loved them. You love pancakes at home. Why don't you try the pancakes? And so the kid tries the pancakes. Fast forward to week 3, and you take that kid to Cracker Barrel. Talk about sensory overload, circle of hell for a 3-year-old. Dollars to donuts, that kid is going to look at the wait staff and say, I'd like pancakes. And the reason is because they've grown a neural pathway upstairs that says, I don't care what my amygdala says, I want pancakes. I like pancakes much more than I'm afraid of crazy new weird restaurants. Now, what we know about brains is that young people, kids especially, when they have any kind of trauma, it doesn't have to be big T, it can be little t trauma, which is basically anything less than ideal. So guess what? We all have a little. Sorry. The wiring of our brain can actually change. You'll find in folks that have some neurospiciness and folks that have had major traumas or major losses, they very often live in a limbic dominant state all the time, constantly hypervigilant for threats. Their nervous systems have static electricity energy going all the time. It often feels like they walk on eggshells through life, never fully able to relax and feel safe. Let's say you grew up in an alcoholic family like I did, and things got scary. When they got scary fast and unpredictably. It's much more likely that those kids grow up with limbic dominant brains. One of my favorite online creators, Danny Reedy, from Asperger Experts, talks about the experience of being in a foxhole during a gunfight. Bullets are flying overhead, landing in the dirt all around you, kicking up clods of dirt. Can you imagine what that would do to your nervous system? You're going to have adrenaline and cortisol coursing through your veins. Then suppose this lovely old lady hobbles up and says, I'm ready to teach you crochet now. Fat chance, right? It's never going to happen. You're not in the right mind space to learn a new skill. Be fully in your alligator brain. So here's where we go wrong in relationship with others. When people are in their alligator brains, we try to negotiate. We try to create learning moments. We argue our position. Just picture that. I've got an alligator cornered in here, and I say, no, you can't eat that prime rib. It's not good for you. You're not eating red meat. The alligator is going to say, not only am I having prime rib, I might eat you afterwards just for pissing me off. We can't teach crochet in foxholes, and we can't stop alligators from being carnivores. The skill here is in learning how to moderate your own emotions while also reading the emotional state of your conversational partner. When your amygdala flips out, it's going to tell your glands to emit adrenaline and cortisol into your bloodstream. Adrenaline, it's your Hulk hormone. And that release of adrenaline happens in a nanosecond. You aren't even aware of it at the time when you touch the hot stove. When you cognitively become aware that it burned, your body has already responded in the most primal of reflexes. Digestion is going to stop. Your body's going to draw all the blood to your core so that if you're fighting with the imaginary lion, it's less likely you'll bleed to death. Your awareness will shift into hyper-focus on your surroundings and becomes all about getting you safe by any and all means possible. So our brains are miraculous places, and they take really good care of us. However, when people get flooded during an argument or when they get easily frightened, you aren't talking to please pass the butter. You're talking to their alligator. The best thing you can do with a cornered alligator is to give it space. Think of the conflicts that could be avoided if we were able to walk away with our power intact until calmer minds prevail. I used to say that I would not assign discipline to my son until after I'd had a good meal and at least 8 hours of sleep. I honestly am a different human being when my amygdala is not driving the emotional bus. I don't like the person I am when I'm scared or hurt. I don't make good decisions, and I certainly don't treat people well, even if they're the people I love the most. Learning how to lose an argument in the immediate term can very often shift the outcome and certainly helps us to not make things worse in the moment. Can you think of a time when your alligator took over? I get it. It's one of our most basic instincts. And the biggest lesson I'd like for you to take from this is that our alligators are just trying to get us safe. They aren't anticipating consequences. They can't understand delayed gratification. They can't even find the words to explain their actions. So when we understand the context, what's going on inside our brains, it gets a whole lot easier to find compassion for ourselves and others in these moments. That's it for lesson 1. Stay tuned for lesson 2. Thanks.